Go ahead and call the meeting to order for Thursday, November 5th, Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. Before we have our opening comments, a couple of things I'd like to remind one thing that I'd like to remind everybody of, and that is please speak into your microphone when you have a comment to make. And if you don't have a microphone in front of you, then you'll need to go to the podium and make your comments there, and remember to mute your phones. Second thing, I would like to welcome Ann Fox. She is our newest member on the Planning Commission, and maybe someday we'll get to see her and not just a circle with an AF around it. So welcome to the commission, Ann. With that, we'll go ahead and have our opening comments, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is the election of secretary, and that was put on the agenda by mistake. And Scott, if you want to address that just a little bit.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. For the election of the secretary, that's not really necessary. The MAPC secretary is the director of planning, so I will continue to fulfill that role. And likewise, I also want to mention for the BZA, the secretary is the principal planner. Since that position is vacant, I'll be assuming that role for right now. May delegate it later, but it will be a staff person.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have the approval of the MAPC minutes for October 22nd, and according to my records, Commissioners Joe Johnson and Ann Fox were absent that day, so they will need to be.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Warren, to approve the minutes for October 22nd. Do we have any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
And we have Mr. Johnson, Mr. Joe Johnson, and Ms. Fox have abstained from that vote. We'll move on to the consideration of the subdivision committee recommendations, but before we do that, I'd like to ask our attorney representing the commission to come up and kind of go over the reasons why we are having to rehear these items and how we need to deal with them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, there are a number of items today, whether vacation or public hearing items, that we are rehearing. The reason for that is prior to the public hearing conducted by this committee, there is a statutory requirement that a notice be published in the recognized official publication record, or the Eagle in this case, for 20 days prior to the hearing. Due to some technical difficulties, the notice request was put in, but the actual notice of the hearing was not published. We are not hearing the results of these things for a period of time, so in a number of these, they actually had gone to the city council. Because the notice requirement was not met, all those actions are void, nothing is binding in that sense, and we're having this heard, and it's called de novo or from the beginning again. Now, you've been provided a copy of the minutes of those cases just for educational purposes to refresh your memory. You're not bound by anything. I think that Scott can address this a little better, and I apologize. I do not believe there was any changes to the original applications. So, it just as a point of reference, since that was a number of months ago, we could all use that memory refresher. My oldest son has already told me he's given me a Prevagen as a stocking stuffer this year, so we go with that. But does anybody have any questions for that? This is just legally, we have to go back from the beginning and start over.
Any questions?
Mr. Warren?
I got a
Yes,
question I've got.
Mr. Warren.
I'm sure we'll probably have hearing again, but if we go ask to do it by consent and no one objects, can we take it by consent?
Mr. Warren, I have never had this happen before. And what we did in subdivision, as opposed to doing that, is to kind of allowed for abbreviated statement of the case to some level, because you guys might be familiar with it. You've had it in your packages. You've read that kind of information. I would be reluctant to do so. Now, again, if anybody's here to speak on the case or anything that would prevent it from going by consent, but I'd rather not take the chance that it get all the way through city council and then find out in district court that, we didn't follow the normal protocol. Since this is a hearing from the inception, we wouldn't take that kind of a case under consent necessarily.
Okay.
So I think in this case, it's probably better to be safe, take a little extra time, hear the case, and go forward with that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So keeping that in mind, we can take these first, or the two items under the plats. We can take both of those on consent, but then when we get to the vacation items, we may have to address those differently. So item 3.1 would be a one-step final plat for Glacier Second Edition. It's case number sub 0044. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, is there anyone in Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
Not today.
Okay. And is there anyone virtually that would like to hear the one-step final plat for Glacier Second Edition?
Well, we just joined and didn't hear the first part.
We're looking for people that might like to comment on the one-step final plat for Glacier Second Edition. Is this an item that you would like to hear?
Yes.
Oh, okay, we will hear that item. Next case would be subdivision 00048, one-step final plat for Walker Homestead Edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, we can take that one on consent.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve agenda item 3.2 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Bill Johnson to approve item 3.2, or take 3.2 on consent. Are there any questions concerning the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously, and I believe we may have 14? 13, we have 13, so 13-0. Okay, next item would be the public hearing on vacation items, number 0023, located at 2416 South El Rancho Road. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain from this item.
Okay. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Okay. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item 4.1? Hearing none, we will have an abbreviated presentation on 4.1 per our attorney's recommendation. Next, we have vacation 2020-0025. It's vacating a portion of a platted 15-foot utility easement located at 10606 East Glen Gate Circle. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? No one on the commission that would like to hear this item. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear case number 4.2 on Glen Gate Circle? Hearing none, we will have an abbreviated presentation on that item. Vacation number 2020-00026. It's vacation of a platted 15-foot utility easement located approximately 1,500 feet east of Hillside on 17th Street. Is there anyone on the council that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be abstaining from that item.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, we'll have an abbreviated presentation of that. Vacation number 2020-00027. It's the vacation of a drainage and utility easement located on Maple Street between Maple Lane and Arapahoe, specifically at the addresses on West University, 6210, 6220, 6230, and 6240. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Nobody. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Okay, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, we'll have an abbreviated presentation on that one. And now we're to vacation 2020-00040, city vacation of a platted front setback located on 127th Street and 1/4 mile south of 29th Street. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear that item? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Okay, and is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, we will take that one by consent. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would approve item 4.5, vacation case 2020-00040.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Bill Johnson, second by Mr. Joe Johnson, to approve item number 00040. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 13-0. Moving on to our public hearing. Condition case 0000025. It's a rehearing of the conditional use to permit a multifamily development on property zone TF3 located at 217 South Fountain. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item? Mary, we didn't hear.
Sorry about that. There's no one at Century 2 for this item.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? Hearing none, we'll take that one on an abbreviated format. Actually, is that the one? Excuse me for a second. That one was recommended to deny, so we'll have a regular, not an abbreviated hearing on that one. Thank you. 5.2, we've had a lot of correspondence on 5.2, so we will go ahead and hear 5.2. Excuse me while I get caught up here. Okay, moving on to.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd recommend that we say the name and the address of that one, so if anybody's listening in and doesn't have a copy of our agenda, they would know that we will be hearing that one.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. 5.2 is zone case 2020 quadruple 07, which is changing the single-family residential to TF3 zoning, located down at 50th Street South in Osage, and we will be hearing that item. Next up, thank you, Mr. Warren. Next up, we have zone case number 00025. It's to rezone from single-family SF5 to limited commercial, located at 2438 South El Rancho Road. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain from this item.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nobody that wants to hear this one, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item at 2438 South El Rancho Road. Hearing none, we will take that one on an abbreviated format. 5.4 has been deferred until November 19th. Our next case is zone case 2020-00036. It's rezoned from general office to neighborhood retail with a protective overlay located at Kellogg and Edgemore Drive. Is there anyone who would like to hear this item on the commission? Hearing none. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, there may be someone here that wants to speak.
Okay, we will hear this case. Next item is zone case 2020-00037. Rezoning general commercial property to central business district located at 604 West Texas. Excuse me. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this item? Hearing none. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item located at 604 West Texas? Hearing none, we will take that one on consent. Next case would be zoning case 2020-00038 with a conditional 2020-00031. Rezoning SF5 single family to industrial park for a parcel located at West 21st Street and East Hoover Road, roughly at the 5,000 block of West 21st Street. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be abstaining from that item.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No one at Century 2.
And is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take this item on consent. If I could get a motion for items 5, 6, and 5, 7.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Bill Johnson, second by Mr. Hartman. Everybody clear on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you. Yes?
we better make sure that we had one abstention on that second one.
Oh, okay, that's right. We can take the vote separately then. So item 5.6,
5.2 and 5.7.
okay, 5, 6, and 5, 7. So you have to abstain on 5, 7? Okay. So we'll have to split this vote up. All those in favor of the motion for item 5.6 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Now on item 5.7. Everybody in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And abstained, we have one abstention, Mr. Foster. Thank you.
Take the road in. What?
Okay.
Can I get
At-
the picture?
At this point, we'll recess into the the MAPC meeting and go to our BZA agenda. Call to order the BZA meeting for November 5th, 2020. First off, we have the approval of the October 8th BZA meeting. I show Commissioners Florence and Blick to be absent.
Move for approval.
Been moved by Mr. Bill Johnson, second by Mr. Nix. I said Bill Johnson, sorry, Mr. Joe Johnson made the motion. And Mr. Nix seconded that motion. Are there any questions concerning the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Abstaining.
Motion carries unanimously with Mr. Florence abstaining. Okay.
No, that's Ann Fox.
And Fox abstaining.
And, yeah, she wasn't, that's right, Ann Fox would be abstaining too. Well, no, she's here, but she wasn't at that meeting anyway. She was not on the BZA board at that time, so. Okay, next case is BZA case 2020 triple lot 43. It's a variance to allow accessory building located at 12,201 South Fireside Court. Mr. Williams?
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Williams, Associate Planner. This is BZA 2020-43. The applicant requests a variance to permit an accessory structure to be placed in front of the principal structure. The accessory structure is described in the application as being a garage or a shop that is 24 by 48 feet. The building would be built 15 feet away from the eastern property line, or the eastern setback line, I'm sorry. In the application, the applicant states that this situation is unique because of the way the house has been situated on the property in the past.
Here? Huh? Okay. I got the available planning commission, so I may have to run.
The house is situated on the southwest corner of the property, facing northeast, so it has a very small backyard. Also, because the short frontage is to the east, the front yard is considered facing east, and so with this accessory structure being built in that location requires this process. The applicant has stated that they don't foresee any adverse harm to nearby properties. A denial of this variance could present a hardship for the applicant by causing them to keep their vehicles outside of an enclosed structure and not having proper space to keep all of their property and storage for their home. The applicant asserts that the variance requested will not adversely affect the public and that this request is within the spirit and intent of the code. Should the board determine that all 5 conditions necessary for granting this variance have been found, staff is recommending that the variance be granted according to the conditions in the staff report. I have heard a comment from one neighbor that was concerned about the accessory structure just having an effect on property values, and I'd be happy to go through some of these photos for you. Next slide. Next slide. So here's the site plan. As you can see, the house faces the northeast, the corner of that property, and the accessory building is in the southeastern corner of the lot. Next slide. Here's the section of the property where that building would be built. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. be happy to answer any questions about this.
Do you have any questions? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Matt, I'm curious on the diagram provided here. It calls for a 3-foot easement between the properties. Aren't setback rules gonna take over on something like that?
Yes, the setback rules are gonna be in place. I believe that is an existing 3-foot easement that they're just calling out on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Hearing none. If we could have the agent, or in this case, the applicant, you'll have 10 minutes to present your case.
Any questions?
Is this, could you state your name and address for the record so we know who we're talking to? Is this Christopher or Stacy Wadle here?
Yes, this is Stacy Woodell. Address is 12201 Fireside Court.
Can you go ahead and explain to us what your hope is here for your variance?
Our hope is just to have some extra space. Our home is not very large. It's a unique property. It's a unique home. This accessory building would give us more space for, work that we need to do on vehicles or work that we need to do on the home, be able to store materials, be able to work with materials. It's just a very unique property. The property set for 3 years is just a type that requires a special buyer. So this would also help with resale for them to, for the same issues, to be able to have space and be able to work on things, whether, a hobby or just to be able to keep vehicles running. In our situation, we do not take our vehicles to the shop. We always do everything that we possibly can. Um, and it's not going to be horrible colors. The colors that I'm going with are actually similar to the house colors that we're going to paint next year. So it will actually, in a sense, match the house. It's not going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's very well hidden by established trees and bushes. Quite a few people in our property, in our neighborhood, have accessory buildings, and it has not affected anyone in a negative way. That's basically what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Right there.
Seeing no question.
What is it going to take of?
Are there any commissioners that have any questions for the applicant? Seeing or hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to speak to this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case located at 12201 South Fireside Court?
You don't need to know if it's going to be a pole building or anything.
If you could state your name and address for the record, if you're speaking on this Fireside Court item. Anyone wanting to speak to the commission
Is it going to be a pole building, or is it just going to be like siding like a house?
Okay, we'll let the applicant respond to that when it's her turn again. Ma'am, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Carol Foxworthy, 12203 East Fireside Court.
Okay, thank you. Is that your only concern with this at this point?
Well, we were wondering if it's going to be a pole building or if it's going to look like it's a, a garage-like part of the house.
Okay, we'll have the applicant address that. I'll find out if there's anybody else who would like to comment on this case.
You wanted it.
Hearing no one, we'll bring it back to the applicant. You'll have 2 minutes to respond to the question that was raised. Stacy, if you could respond, please.
Yes, it will be a pole type structure. We'll have metal sheeting on the outside.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and bring this back to the commission for action. Mr. Foster?
Matt, I'd be curious, I know typically on accessory structures, especially if it's a dwelling type, which this isn't, we try to get it to be similar to an existing structure. Is that any consideration from staff standpoint, or is it irrelevant?
Yeah, that's not required in this situation. I'm waiting to see if JR has any comment.
Yeah, I would just add the insights that typically that's not something that we're too concerned about. In this case, we're looking at the location of where it is and the setbacks, not so much about the visual character in this instance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Warren.
I'm following on the same lines. I guess my question would be, are there other structures in this neighborhood that would be a pole structure? I mean, are we introducing something new to this area that has not been there before? Is that gonna, that would, to me, that would make a difference. So I don't know who can answer that question for us, if there's, the applicant?
Yeah, the applicant might be able to answer that better than I can. When I drove to take pictures, I noticed several accessory buildings like this. I can't say that I saw a metal sided one.
So you saw some open pole?
No, I did not.
Okay, so what's this one gonna be? This is gonna be
It sounds like this is gonna be an
It'll be a-
enclosed metal sided structure.
Just using poles.
Okay. So, and you didn't see any others in the area that were similar, or you did?
I saw accessory buildings. I don't believe I saw any that were metal sided.
Okay. That'd be a question I'd have for the applicant.
Okay, if, Ms. Weddle, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. We have a question by one of the commissioners concerning the type of structure that you're going to be building, and if there are anything,
Right.
if there are any buildings of similar design in the neighborhood.
Yes, there are two right down the street to the west of us that are actually metal sheeting exteriors, the same as what we're wanting to build.
Okay, all right, thank you. And as was stated by Mr. Wadle, our concern is not necessarily the design of the structure, but more the variance to reduce the requirements on the setback. So, do we have any other questions or concerns? Do we have a motion?
I move we approve, subject to staff comments.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Bill Johnson, to approve per staff comments. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries 12-1. Moving on to the next item, BZA 2020-00049, variance to allow a carport at 3 Laurel Drive.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This gentleman, Jerry Williams, and I don't know if he's on virtual electronic with us or not, he has requested a variance to allow a carport attached to the front of his house. Jim, next slide. This property is over south of Central. This is a well-established neighborhood. The streets are, they don't have curbs, they're bar ditches, that type of thing. The streets are somewhat narrow, maybe 30 feet. There is parking allowed on the sides of the street, and so he is requesting the variance because he's a painter, and he keeps his equipment there at his house. And so if he parks his equipment out on the street, then creates a traffic problem. He's also had tools and equipment stolen, so he wanted this carport so that he could pull his trailer and painting truck in and have a little bit of security. Next picture, please. Here's the site plan that he provided, and if you look on the on the north side of the carport, there's a drainage ditch stream along there that he is set back from, and just to ensure that the setbacks were correct, in the staff report it mentions a reduction from 6 feet to 2 feet on the interior side setback, and it should also say front setback from 25 feet to 16 feet to allow for the carport to extend into the front setback. The other issues he had is that it would allow him to provide some storage at the very front of the carport that would be closer to the house. He provided a rationale statement, which I have given you some of. He doesn't want to reduce, he's got a very nice mature vegetation around the house, so actually the carport will not be that noticeable from the other properties. Jim, if you would go through pictures. As you can see, there's a truck there. The carport is in front of that truck. That truck is too tall to fit under there, and that's looking north. This is directly across the street. Next. The carport is not enclosed, but he has put slats on the sides just to an extra measure of security. to keep people from getting into the vehicles and his work trucks. This is the property just north of his, and as you can see, what I was talking about is there's a creek drainage, something right there with a lot of trees on it, so it's not visible from the north property because of that vegetation. Next. And this is looking down, looking west along the north property line. So staff is recommending approval, or recommending that should the board determine the conditions are necessary to grant the variance, then the interior side back be reduced from 6 feet to 2 feet, and the front setback be reduced from 25 to 16 feet. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Kathy, would that reduction apply, I'm looking at item number 1 and the conditions, apply to the carport structure only and not be a blanket reduction across the entire lot?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Applies only to the carport structure.
And then on, second question is, on the site plan we've been given, I'm assuming that the line for Laurel Drive is perhaps the asphalt?
Yes.
And that the drainage is running, of course, under that driveway, but my question is, are there any issues related to the actual right-of-way line? Is it, does this?
No, it's the property, that road is a 60.
I think it says 50, it says
50,
Laurel Drive,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a 50-foot right-of-way, so this will not encroach into any right-of-way at that location.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, we'll go to the owner applicant. Mr. Williams, are you online or in Century 2?
No one at Century 2.
Doesn't sound like Mr. Williams is with us today. Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No one at Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this item? This would be the property located at 3 Laurel Drive. Not hearing anybody. We'll bring this back to the commission. Just wanted to, if you could restate the recommendation here, because it's different than
Yes.
what.
The recommendation for the BZA is to allow the 6-foot interior side back to be reduced to 2 feet. The 25-foot front setback be reduced to 16 feet, and these reductions only apply to the carport.
Okay. All right.
Move to approve as presented. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Dool to approve as presented. Is there any question on the motion? Hearing none.
I have one concern.
Okay, yes, Mr. Florence.
Okay, when he was describing what he was going to do with this, he said storage, and I think that's inappropriate at that particular location. I don't know how we can address that, or should we at this point? But you're talking about in a residential area storing industrial type of materials and stuff.
Yeah, Kathy?
In my understanding with talking with the applicant, He just had some small items, like equipment that he uses for his painting contracting business, like ladders or something like that, that he could set up to the front. There wouldn't be any major storage of items in that area. But he was the one that mentioned storage, so.
I would suggest you just, pass that by JR, just to let him know. Okay?
JR is coming to the podium even as I speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Commissioner Florence, this is a case where this is going to be a structure. So the vehicles being inside the structure would be simply the same as being parked inside of a garage if the garage would already been attached to the house. There could be an issue if it's a home occupation with having too much equipment and there may be some other issues that might go along with that, like employees, which could be a problem. But I really don't see a problem with him, the applicant, being able to have the carport and using it properly for parking, and or it's storage under that carport because it's inside of a building. Did that help, Mr. Florence?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Foster.
We had a case not long ago, similar situation with a carport, and they had gone ahead and slapped up some siding on this, and it was pretty unsightly relative to being attached to the principal structure. My question here is, do we need to make sure the conditions are worded such that this would not happen here?
I think that could certainly be a motion that this body makes, if you wish to put something like that as a condition on this variance, if it's approved.
I mean, to me, this is about as maximum you'd want to go before it falls into the unsightly category. So I think that ought to be part of the motion.
Okay. Any other questions for JR? Thank you. Okay, yes, Mr. McKay.
Mr. Foster, are you suggesting that they side this? Because the pictures are it's already there and they're using it.
No, I'm saying just don't go any further.
Okay, but that's not what, I thought you said that it's sided.
No,
Sided,
it's,
like put siding on
You
it.
go forward to a picture, go
yeah,
ahead,
if you'll go to that one.
go ahead.
That
you
right
go.
there.
Just don't go any further, like don't go get some metal sheeting and put it on there.
No.
That kind of thing. Some inexpensive metal sheeting.
Right, Bill.
But this could go another step, which I think would be in the wrong direction by putting siding on what we're seeing there that might be construed as framing.
Okay, yes, Mr. Warren.
I agree with the concern. I guess the problem I've got with it is who would know down the line, how would you, if somebody did something, decided they wanted to side it with whatever, it probably would not require a permit. No one, I guess the question would be, how would you enforce it, or how would you put it into effect?
We've got Mr. Cox coming back.
I would say as with any issue we did deal with, it's going to be by complaint basis. We would get a complaint and then we would go out and investigate. If there's a condition about the materials used, the manner in which they're used, if we were to go out onto the site and let's say they just put metal siding up, so they made it look like a Morton building. But what you all approve is that, and we have that in our record, which we should and we will, then that would be a violation. It'd be handled like any other violation.
Okay, so we could either put wording on that would dictate what it would be, or that any change would require approval of who? Of the
MAPC.
You'd have to
planning
come back to
department?
this body, I would say.
The body?
Come back to
Yes.
us. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, we have a motion
We have
on.
a motion.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor. and it's been seconded. Is there a substitute motion, or are we good?
I would just suggest the original motion allow for no additional siding to be placed on the structure without city approval.
I would amend my motion to incorporate that.
Okay,
I would accept that.
okay. Friendly amendment to the motion. Everybody clear on the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next case is BZA 2020-00050. It's a variance to reduce side setback located at 904 East Mount Vernon.
Yes, okay, this application requests the reduction of the side yard setback from 6 feet to 2 feet to allow for what the application describes as an existing carport. The applicant has stated that they purchased the carport without obtaining the proper permits. The carport is described in the application as being 16.5 feet wide and 25 feet long. According to the applicant, the carport has been installed 3 feet away from the home and 2 feet away from the fence. The attached application describes the carport as open, but as you'll see in the photos, the structure appears to have sides, including a garage door and an access door. The applicant has stated that, like I said, when they purchased the carport, the company did not get the proper permits, and following the installation, an inspector let them know that they needed to get permits for the project. The applicant has stated that they don't foresee any adverse harm to the nearby properties, and they actually believe the carport will reduce street parking, which may be a benefit to the neighbors. A denial of this variance could cause a hardship for the applicant, who would be required to remove the carport. The applicant feels that there will not be any adverse effect on the public, and that this is within the spirit and intent of the code. Should the board determine that those 5 conditions necessary for granting the variance have been found, staff recommends that the variance be granted subject to the following conditions. The interior side setback reduction shall only apply to the enclosed garage structure as shown on the site plan, and the applicant shall obtain the proper building permits and an inspection to verify that the building is in proper shape and is within the proper setback. I did receive an email with photographs and some wording from a neighbor. You should all have that. I'll let that speak for itself. I'm sure that person might be here to talk about it. If we go to the photos, next slide. Here's a site plan kind of showing where the structure is compared to the home. Next slide. These are just some homes around the property. Next slide. Next. Next. And here is the structure. As you'll see, the majority of the property is fenced off. If you could go back one. But this is the structure that the variance has been applied for. It is hard to tell if it's 2 feet away from the fence line or if it's 3 feet away from the primary structure. As I said, those are requirements of the code, and if this is approved, they'll be required to get a permit and an inspection to verify those things. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Warren?
2 questions. If they're closer than that, than those numbers, then they would be required to take the building down? Is that what we're saying?
The building code, as I understand, requires a 3 feet between structures. That's where the 3 feet between the home comes from. And the application is only requesting a reduction from 6 feet to 2 feet. So they're only asking, they're basically saying that the structure is 2 feet away from their property line and they don't need a variance more than that. If it's found to be more than that, I guess they could come back and get a variance for 0 feet or 1 foot, but they're only requesting 2 feet.
And remind me again, how far out are notification to the neighbors that this request is being made?
I believe this was 200 feet. I don't have that right in front of me. Yeah, 200 feet.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna piggyback. Did you get your initial question asked? Because I think you were concerned about the distance between the garage
Well,
and
if they're
the
asking for-
house
if-
as opposed to the garage and the fence.
Because what we're approving is 2 foot. If it comes out that it's 21 inches, do they have to move the structure 3 inches?
So that would be the distance from the property line to the structure.
Okay.
And in that case, they would still be in violation and they would have to move it or request a variance that's appropriate for them.
And then when they get the property inspected by, I assume MAPCD, then at that point, and I know it's not our concern necessarily, but at that point, if the garage is closer than 3 feet to the house, then there would be some issues there too. Is that my understanding? An affirmative nod by.
Yeah, my understanding is MAPCD wouldn't allow that structure
Yeah,
to be
okay.
closer than 3
All right.
feet.
Because that was the other half of the question that I had. Okay, Scott, were you getting ready to say something? No? Okay. Mr. Foster?
This may be a JR question as well. Note on the photograph we received from the neighbor that there's an overhang that seems to overlap the roof structure of the principal structure. Is that something that's going to have to be addressed with this permit?
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning. I'm not sure I said that the first time. My apologies if I didn't. For the record, I should have.
We'll let it go.
I appreciate that, thank you. It's a good question. So what we have here are two different issues, really. There's the building code with its requirements, and then there's the zoning code. 3-foot separation is also part of the zoning code. However, eaves are allowed to cross into separations and setbacks a certain distance. I would discuss this with the chief plan reviewer before I gave a definite answer on that, but probably from a building code perspective, if they protected the underside of those eaves, it would probably be okay. They would probably be acceptable. That's a guess on my part. And for land use, I would say as long as the main walls have the 3 feet, that would be acceptable. But to honestly answer your question, I'd want to do a little research into that.
Which
Because it
I'm
could be
comfortable
an
to be
issue.
handled with the permit process.
Yes,
so,
yes.
yeah. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Theoretically, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, if we could have the applicant, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes. Williams, Edgardo Rivas, or Herman Granados? Do we see anybody on there that,
Mr. Chairman, we don't see anyone on the list that matches those names.
okay. All right. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this item?
And Mr. Chairman, we have one person here today.
Okay. If they could come to the microphone and state their name and address for the record, and they have 3 minutes.
My name is Linda Weir, and I live at 1938 South Mosley. I'm going to back up just a moment before I say what I have to say. The overhang on this building, behind this garage that you see in this photo here, is an actual carport. So they've built a carport and an enclosed garage. The roof line of all of that connects to the house as well. The house, the carport, the garage are all connected on the east side behind this garage that you see in this photo. They are not 3 feet from the house, and they're not 2 feet from the fence, as the applicant states. And this is apparent in the photos because that door The walk-through door is a 3-foot door. That door is much wider than the space that you see between the garage and the home. And the photos that I provided you should show that as well. Prior to the carport and the garage being built, there was ample room to park 2 wide in that driveway. Now, by building this structure against code, they've restricted to just 1 vehicle being able to park there. I have other photos that I should have sent. I've never seen anybody park in that building. They park to the right behind the wood fence there, facing Mount Vernon Street. Building codes and regulations should have been explored prior to building, not after. The large weekly gatherings at this structure do in fact have an effect on the safety, health, morals, and order of the immediate neighborhood and the community. Gatherings include alcohol and loud music. I have been assaulted by one of their guests who was obviously intoxicated when I asked them to turn the music down at 11:30 at night. This goes on every single week. Wichita Police has responded to numerous calls at this address since this structure was built. The applicant has blatantly ignored city ordinances and codes. They have completed concrete work, construction of 2 structures, the carport and the garage, and electrical work. Were the those contractors licensed? Do they know what they're doing? Is this place going to burn down? This structure has been here for close to 2 years. It's not a new structure. As far as parking on the street, there's plenty of parking there. The previous occupants had 5 children and 3 grandchildren, and they all parked there with no problem. I don't ever see more than 3 vehicles there at any time. And like I say, they park behind that wood fence that's shown in the photo, facing the south towards Mount Vernon. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Ms. Ware, you've raised an interesting question. You note, or refer to them as social concerns on the activities that occur there. But more concerned related to this case about the land use and relative to the tall fencing that's there and the actual carport structure that's been built or detached garage. How does that impact you from use of your property?
It doesn't impact me from using my property, but if I were to build a structure like this, I would have to tear it down. That structure was not built to code, obviously. There were no permits, no taxes have been paid on it for the last 2 years that it's been standing there.
Thank you.
The parties that go on there do impact me because there's a risk of someone in my neighborhood or myself being hit by a drunk driver. Like I said, I was assaulted by one of those people.
Okay, any other?
Everybody has to follow code.
Any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Since we don't have anybody on the other side, is there anybody else in Century 2?
Mr. Chairman, no one else.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to the commission for action. Yes, Mr. Dool.
I don't quite understand how this case came before us. I assume that the applicants filed this application. However, the applicants aren't here. This is obviously a structure that was built before they got the application, and, you know, short of some other explanation, I'd have a hard time supporting this.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Dool. I neglected to see if there was anybody else virtually that would like to address this item. At 904 East Mount Vernon.
Bob, I hear what you're saying. I would hate to deny it. I would like to defer it until the applicant's here to respond.
Is that a
Motion.
motion to defer? Okay. Do we,
I have a question before.
before that? Okay.
Were they in violation, that's why they came before the BZA?
Yeah, that's my understanding is that
Okay,
the
that
structure
makes a
already
difference.
existed and they got a complaint against them.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to defer. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Foster to defer until we have the applicant.
Do we have a specific date? I mean, the applicant did get information about this meeting.
What would be the
19th?
next available date, since we have reporting concerns? Do we have
My
an idea
understanding
of
is that if
that?
we defer it at this meeting, we could defer it to the next planning.
And the 19th would be the next meeting.
We could hear it on the 19th? Enough publication notice and,
I just
Yeah,
contact
we
him.
shouldn't have to do that if we defer it at this public hearing.
okay, all right. So,
We're gonna get legal counsel.
Cindy's got something to say.
okay.
I would suggest you just contact him.
While our legal counsel is coming up, Ms. Miles, did you have a comment?
Well, I don't understand why, I guess that if they were aware of the case today and they didn't show up, why we would defer it to give them another opportunity to show up if they didn't show up to start with. I'm a little bit confused by that.
Okay, it's justifiable confusion. Mr. Warren, did you have a?
I'll hold
Wait,
my question for a
defer
second.
until,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, Jeff?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Could you repeat?
Actually, staff will be able to go out and give us some accurate numbers in terms of distance between the building, between now and then, if we were to defer.
Certainly, there is no need to republish if it's deferred in a public hearing, and the additional information can be requested upon staff or applicant.
Okay.
I would also opine as to the requirement of hardship in Kansas cannot be self-imposed or cannot be just a mere financial consideration of the applicant itself. So you might want to address the applicant ahead of time to come in to be prepared to talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
My motion would be that he be contacted.
Okay.
Prior-
Okay, so
prior-
we're gonna, the motion is to defer for 2 weeks. Or, yeah, 11 till 11/19, and it was seconded. Do we have any further comments?
And we want to get.
Yes,
accurate-
Mr.
we wanna get
Fonson.
accurate dimensions.
Yeah, my question for staff, does that need to be a part of the motion, or will staff have time to go out and give us some accurate?
I'm making it.
I'd have to ask JR if we have the ability to go on the property to measure.
No, you don't.
If you could, yeah, come.
Metropolitan Planning, again, I would generally, if I was being asked this a little farther back on the road, I would require a survey. However, I'd be more than happy to go out, assuming I'll have permission from the owner, and get the dimensions that we need. I can do that, I think I
So
can.
we can make a condition of of consideration that they have a survey.
Yes, you could. I think the problem would be the amount of time.
Yeah.
If you really want to hear it in 2 weeks, I don't think they'll get a surveyor out in
Right.
2 weeks.
No, they wouldn't be able to.
But I can get us pretty close, I think.
Right, can we request if they have an existing survey?
Yes, Ms. Gross, did you have a question?
Yeah, some people already have an existing survey. I mean, if they have it, can we request it?
I think we can ask. We may already have it.
I don't think they've got a survey of the new,
I
of
doubt
the
it.
building, yeah. They might have a survey of the
True.
lot, but not showing the building. If, I would just make that an amendment, Could they amend the motion to have staff do that, or do you need it you just need that request? Does it need to be a part of the motion?
I'll make that part of my
Sorry, you
motion.
requested it of me, so.
Okay. We'll request accurate information on distances.
Okay, so,
And both dimensions, Mr. Green, both from the house to the garage and from the garage to the
Between the
property line.
buildings and the property line.
And both at the surface and at the overhang. Or just tell us how much the overhang is. I don't want to give you too much work.
Mr. Foster, Mr. Foster?
JR, if you would, and Matt, you know, we're referring to this as a carport, but it's starting to appear like an accessory detached garage. So I think we should have some clarification on that.
Yeah, in my recommendation, I do say that we grant the variance to apply to the enclosed garage structure.
Not that I would wish we'd confuse things, but we've heard testimony today that there's a carport behind what I would call a garage. I think as long as I'm out there, that needs to be looked at as well. At this point, I have no idea. It can't be seen. As far as I know, you can't see it from the front or the side. It may well have the same issues as this garage.
Yeah, I think Ms. Ware's photograph shows the carport on the back side of that garage, if you will. That's circled in pink. Yeah.
That's, yes, that looks.
So yeah, if you could kind
I
of
think so.
clear some of that up for us, and if we could ensure the fact that the applicants will be at the 11/19 meeting. If it appears as though that's not going to work, then I guess we'll put it back another 2 weeks. We'll let staff,
Deny it.
or we can just deny. That's true. On the 19th. Yeah. Okay.
Very good.
Yep, thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Are there any questions concerning the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. Nay.
Okay, if we could,
Nay, nay.
Roll call.
if we could have a roll call, please.
You bet, sir. All right, Mr. Chairman Green,
Aye.
Bill Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. McKay,
Aye.
Ms. Gross,
Aye.
Ms. Fox,
Aye.
Mr. Dool,
Nay.
Mr. Nix,
Aye.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Mr. Warren,
Aye.
Joe Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Miles,
Nay.
Mr. Hartman, Mr. Florence.
Nay.
That is 4 nays and 9 yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. We will now adjourn the BZA meeting and resume our MAPC meeting. If we could have our first item, please, Glacier Second Edition.
Neil Straw, planning staff, item 3-1 is the Glazer Second Edition. Property is located at 71st and 143rd. Encompasses 6 lots, 6 residential lots. Zoning is RR, rural residential. It's an unplatted site in the county. MAPC will need to issue their standard approval memo for on-site wastewater. The site is within the rural water district. Connection is recommended if available. County Stormwater approved the drainage plan. Next slide, please. Next slide. And next slide. This is the northeast corner of the site where the Lot 4 has an adjoining drainage reserve. Shown there is Drainage Reserve 4. Next slide. And the southwest corner of the site is a similar situation where Lot 6 has an adjoining drainage reserve. And these adjoining numbered drainage reserves will be owned and maintained by the lot owner, along with a restrictive covenant tying the lot together with the drainage reserve. Next slide, please. This is showing the access controls along 143rd. The plat denotes 2 joint openings. Next slide. And there is also 2 openings along 71st Street, including 1 joint opening for the eastern 2 lots. All these access controls have been approved by County Public Works. And County Fire advised the plat will need to comply with the Citrus County Service Drive Code. Any questions for staff?
Questions for staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant.
Rose, the company agent for the applicant. The applicant agrees with staff comments.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the agent? Hearing none, is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this item?
There's no comment from Century 2.
Thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this item, Glacier Second Edition? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for consideration.
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Joe Johnson to approve per staff comment. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to the vacation items, we'll take this next one, item number 4.1. I believe, was this one of the abbreviated?
Yes.
Okay.
The only ones we have to talk about this morning are the abbreviated. Vacation 40 was the only one that we were able to take on consent. That was a new item. So 23, 25, 26, and 27, I'll do abbreviated presentation for you. Vacation 23, the applicant is requesting the vacation of a portion of a 10-foot and a 7-foot platted utility easement. The property address 2425 South Hillside. If you go to the aerial, Jim, the applicant is looking to build an addition onto the back side of the property that faces Hillside. He's looking to build this addition on the property that is off of El Rancho Road. And so in order to connect the buildings, he needs to vacate these utility easements. He has already worked with Public Works on getting a private project for the sewer line that is there. The property is zoned limited commercial, and the type of use he is doing there will be, is permitted within the LC district. Evergy and Cox have equipment in the area. However, they do not object. Any removal or relocation of this equipment is at the applicant's expense. It was heard by the subdivision committee last week, and they recommended approval 5-0. I can stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Mr. Dool, you didn't have your hand up. You were, okay. I thought you had a question. Okay. Do we have the agent or applicant?
Kirk Miller, I'm the agent, and we're fine with staff comments.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Is there anybody at Century 2 that would like to address this case?
No comment from Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case located at 2416 South El Rancho Road? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Nix, second by Mr. Warren to approve. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Yes, sir, Chairman, I had to abstain from that item.
And anybody abstain? So the motion carries all but one. 1201. All right, next case,
Vacation 25.
Yep.
The applicant is requesting the vacation of a portion of a 15-foot platted utility easement at 10606 East Glengate Circle. Property is located southwest of 21st and Greenwich. The property is zoned SF5 with a CUP attached to it. The applicant would like to remove the unnecessary portion of the platted easement on his property. The vacation area does retain an easement for the public sewer manhole that's in the area at the northeast corner of the property. It also retains an easement to the southwest corner of the property for the utilities that are located there. There are no public utilities within the subject area of the easements. Evergy has no objection. It was heard by staff subdivision committee last week with a recommendation of 5-0, and I can stand for any staff questions.
any questions for staff? Hearing none, do we have the agent or applicant?
Hmm.
10606 East Glengate Circle. Anyone from MKEC? Hearing none. Do we have anybody at Century 2 that would like to address this item?
No comment from Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Warren to approve. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next case, please.
Vacation 2020-26, the applicant is requesting to vacate a 15-foot utility easement that is located on the south side of East 17th Street between Yale and Fountain Avenue. Utility easement was established by ordinance number 9716 in 1927 when the city of Wichita vacated a portion of East 17th Street. The ordinance returned that portion of East 17th Street back to the properties from which it was dedicated, but they retained the land as an easement. There are no public utilities in the easement. The applicant is requesting this vacation for the purposes of redevelopment. Evergy and Cox do have equipment and facilities in the area. They have been working with the agent and applicant on this. Any removal or relocation is at the applicant's expense, and I can stand for any staff questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none. Do we have the agent or applicant? Okay. Is there anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No comment from Century 2.
Comment. Yeah. Anybody virtually that would like to comment on this item? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for
Move for approval.
Second.
been approved by, the motion's been made by Mr. McKay for approval, second by Mr. Bill Johnson, and we have one abstention on this. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And the abstention is one, Mr. Foster. Moving on to item number 27, 4.4.
Yes, the applicant in this case is requesting the vacation of a platted drainage and utility easement in addition to the vacation of the platter's text for Reserve A on a property located south of West Maple between Maple Lane and Arapahoe Drive. Site is currently undeveloped. Jim, if you go to the site plan, purpose of this vacation is in order, if you want to go to the exhibit, I'm sorry, the next one, is in order to build group homes on the property. They need to vacate the utility easement in order to build them, as well as amend the platter's text to allow residential uses within the Reserve A in order to build these group homes. There are no public utilities in the easement. Evergy has no objection. Their only comment was that they have main lines in the utility easement on the east side of the property. That easement is not part of this request, so there's no issue there. It's heard by subdivision committee last week with a recommended vote of 5-0. I can stand for any staff questions.
Questions for staff? Seeing none, do we have the agent or applicant?
Chris Rose with Baldwin Company, agent for the applicant. The applicant agrees with staff comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the agent? Seeing none. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to address this item?
No comment from Century 2.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case? Hearing no one, we will bring it back to the commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Miles to approve per staff comment. All those and any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, same sign, or nay. Hearing no nays, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public hearing, conditional case number 00025.
Kathy Morgan for the planning staff. As Mr. Van Zant stated at the beginning of the meeting, this is a case that is being reheard because it did not meet the public notice requirement before the Planning Commission. This is a property in College Hill that is currently developed with a duplex unit, and then there's an accessory apartment in the garage structure. The site has less than the 9,000 square feet needed to have 3 dwelling units. So staff recommended denial of this application. At the, just for background, the Planning Commission did recommend approval with a condition that if 50% of the garage unit or 50% of the garage were damaged, that there would not be, they would not be allowed to have a 3rd dwelling unit on that property. I have received no contact from anyone, emails or telephone. This was resent to all of the property owners on the ownership list. And so with that, I will stand for any questions.
Do you have any questions for staff? Hearing none, I see that we have the owner online here. Do we have anybody at Century 2 first that would like to discuss this?
No one from Century 2.
Okay. If we could have the owner, go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Haley Heater. It's 217 South Fountain.
Do we have any questions for her? Hearing none. Sorry for everything that you're having to go through again on this, but there's we had no control over that. So thank you for being here again. Is there anybody virtually that would like to address this item? Hearing nobody, and I know we don't have anyone at Century 2 on this item, so we'll bring it back to the commission.
I move we approve the application, subject to staff, well, I can't say that because staff recommended denial. Just move for approval.
Yes. Okay, it's been moved to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Nix.
Could we add that with the condition that if 50% of the garage unit is destroyed, that it cannot be rebuilt, or do you want to not include that?
Nope, include that.
Included? Yes, okay, yes, it is included. And the second agrees. All right, any question on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing no nays, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, 5.2.
This is again a rehearing for the Sycamore Pond addition. It was a request for changing of SF5 existing lots to TF3 for duplex uses. Again, you have in your packet, we do have quite a number of emails that were sent in along with a neighborhood petition, if you will, which is not a valid petition, of people opposing the rezoning. For reference again from the August 6th meeting, the commission heard this. There were the applicant, the agent was online. There were multiple people that testified from the neighborhood that they did not want the rezoning, and the action or the discussion by the commission was to approve the rezoning but reduce the number of lots that were going to be rezoned from SF5 to TF3. And that was, I don't know if you all have a copy of those minutes, but basically the legal was remove the 11 lots east of the new home at the corner of 50th and Osage on the south side of 50th Street, and the 6 lots on the north side of 50th Street east of Osage, and let the remaining lots be rezoned to TF3. So staff is recommending support of the request for the rezoning. This is in keeping with what our plan is, our comprehensive plan. The district advisory board for District 4 did approve, made recommendation for approval of this zone change as it was presented. I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Waddle?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up on the staff presentation. I want to point out that once MAPC, assuming that you make a recommendation today, that there will be another protest period by which people can submit protests in the future. So just want to emphasize that that option is available to folks with this case.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, any questions for, any questions for staff?
Yes.
Can
you explain why the petition isn't valid?
Is this,
It's
is it,
Ann.
it's what?
Ann.
It's
Ann.
It's Ann, and I'm just
Oh, okay,
wondering
Ann,
why
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
The documents,
Can you explain?
the documents that you received in the packet that had a statement with a bunch of names on it, they referred to that as a petition, and I'm gonna let city council answer that.
Yes, Counselor.
Jeff Anzant, Assistant City Attorney. Just wanted to make sure, since this is a rehearing, we're starting from the beginning, okay? The ability to file a protest petition exists for 14 days following the final decision of this body. The information before, I just wanted to clarify, they had submitted a protest petition. They'll need to do that again, and they'll have 14 days from presumably today to refile it to constitute a protest, okay?
Yes.
And that's why it's not invalid in the sense, they get to do it again.
Right.
There wasn't anything wrong with what was done before, but it's not going to be considered because this is a rehearing.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Clear as mud.
Yes,
It's
thank
clear.
you.
Oh, yes.
And the protest petition deadline will be the 19th, November 19th, 5 p.m. is when the city clerk must receive the valid protests.
Okay, so everyone that's either at Century 2 or listening to this case virtually, please keep in mind that you're assuming that whatever action we take here today, if we do approve, you will have until November 19th to resubmit a new protest petition. So just for clarification purposes. All right. So do we have the agent or applicant for this case?
Yes, we do. He's here at Century 2.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Afternoon, Levi Bond with Cobb Valley Engineering, 200 North Emporia, Suite 100, agent for the applicant. We're in agreement with staff comments. Appreciate you guys rehearing this. The one thing I would say is the developer still plans for that wooden fence location screening to the SF5 to the existing single-family homes. So you might add that to the recommendation, whether you take it as it is in the staff report and as Kathy told you guys, or if you choose to modify it later. Be happy to stand for any questions.
Do you have any questions for the agent? Yes, Mr. McKay.
Do you agree to the reconfiguration that we came up with in the last meeting? As far as lots?
We still maintain that you guys should deliberate and make your own decision, but we still maintain that all 65 lots should be zoned TF3, and that's per previous policy, all available information, and from the plans and policies of the planning department.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll open this up for discussion or for comment from the public. Is there anyone at Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Chairman, we have several people here at Century 2.
Okay.
Would like to come up first.
If they could, how many does it look like we have that want to speak to this, Mary?
I have 4.
4, okay. You
4
can just
people.
send them up one at a time, and the first person, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Eric Lesh. I live at 5002 South Osage Circle, Wichita. And the reconfiguration you came up with at the last hearing went ahead and allowed duplexes adjacent to my property that did not cover my property or my neighbors. But I've prepared a statement I want to read. I'm strongly opposed to this rezoning application. When I bought my lot and built my home, I knew it was surrounded by fairly new homes. Homes occupied by people who had a vested interest in the maintenance and upkeep of their property. I reasonably expected future construction in the subdivision to be the same as it has been to this point. I would not have built there if it had been zoned TF3, allowing duplexes. Approval of this rezoning application would have a detrimental impact on the value of my property and a negative effect on the life I've enjoyed living here since 2015. People living in duplexes are usually renters. They have no skin in the game. They have no interest or reason to take care of the property, and certainly no incentive to make any improvements. Just ask yourselves, would you prefer to see your home surrounded by unique homes filled with families who generally stayed put, to make friends and see children grow up? Or to see your home surrounded by duplexes filled with renters that come and go like the changing of the seasons, sometimes leaving behind trash and junk? If you were to allow duplexes in this subdivision, you would be doubling the number of people that could move in. It's reasonable to assume that the amount of traffic would double too. The street right-of-ways are 58 feet wide. The street itself only measures 29 feet between the outside edges of the curbs. People park on both sides of 50th Street. When two vehicles meet, one usually has to pull over and let the other pass. This is not a serious problem now. However, if the subdivision were full and the number of vehicles doubled because you allowed duplexes, it is reasonable to expect a traffic problem. The applicants have not shown any need for or benefit to the community from rezoning this subdivision. They purchased their property at a tax foreclosure auction for the sole purpose of making a profit. They knew how the property was zoned, or should have, at the time of the sale. Of course, there is nothing wrong with developing real estate for a profit, and I do not want to prevent them from realizing a gain on their investment. However, rejecting this application will not deny them their chance to profit. Just this year, 3 new homes were built on speculation at the Sycamore Pond subdivision. They sold quickly.
Sir,
They are now occupied.
excuse me, your time's up. How much more time do you think you'll need to wrap it up?
Just 2 more minutes.
I can give you 1 minute.
Okay. And these are now occupied by families who immediately began making improvements. The applicants need only construct single-family homes to enjoy ample rewards. My neighbors and I were here first. It is not fair to change the rules to suit a newcomer in a manner that has a negative impact on us. I ask you again to ask yourselves, would you want identical duplexes and renters adjacent to your home, or unique homes occupied by families that own them? If you cannot recognize that rejecting the applicant's request is just right and in the best interests of the community, please consider a compromise. The applicants could omit lots 27 through 37 of Block 1 and Lot 11 of Block 3 from their application. This would leave a buffer of lots zoned as single family between my neighbors and I and the duplexes. There would still be 53 lots the applicants could build duplexes on. The applicants could also build 12 single-family homes in the buffer zone or sell the lots. While this arrangement would still be detrimental to the subdivision,
Sir,
I would find it much more desirable.
thank you for your testimony. Your time's unfortunately up. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions for the gentleman here? Seeing no questions. Thank you, sir, for your testimony.
Thank you.
If we could have the next speaker, please. If you could state your name and address. If you could state your name and address for the record. And you have 3
Hi, my name is
minutes.
Vanessa Fletcher. I live at 1821 or 821 West 50th Street South. Okay, my husband and I live at the address of 821 West 50th Street South. That is the corner of Osage and 50th Street. It is the only brand new build on the corner lot next to the open field. Our home is the largest investment and we take pride in our house and our neighborhood. Several of us have appeared on the MAPC meeting on August 6, 2020 to voice our opposition to the proposed rezoning of the 65 lots in our neighborhood from single-family residences to duplexes. Now we have learned that due to a technicality, the applicants are getting a do-over on their proposed rezoning, and we want to express our opposition. We purchased this property because of all the lots in Sycamore Pond Addition were zoned for single-family residences. We know that duplexes are far more likely to be owned by investors and rented rather than owner-occupied houses. This will negatively impact my property value since it will increase the traffic in our neighborhood and the renters do not take care of properties being rented. In addition, investors are typically more interested in keeping any profits rather than reinvesting money in rental properties. We are also concerned about the increased crime in our neighborhood. At the prior August 6, 2020 MAPC hearing, Levi Bond with Kaw Valley Engineering testified that the developer wanted to construct duplexes in 3 phases of 20 duplexes per phase. We wish to dispute his testimony and want to make sure you are aware that at least 3 different individuals own the lots proposed to be rezoned, with different individuals owning lots next to each other. So there is not an assurance with regard to uniform development, consistent quality, or development timeframe. In addition, at the prior August 6, 2020 MAPC hearing, Levi Bond with Kaw Valley Engineering testified that this will be an investment property for developers, and so the developers will make sure the property is being kept up. Again, we wish to dispute his testimony, and we wanted to make sure you are aware that at least 3 different individuals or entities own the lots to be rezoned. Mohammed, owner of at least 3 of the lots, does not appear to have any background in residential real estate development. Juan Pima, owner of at least 10 of the lots, also do not appear to have any background in residential real estate development. Also, unfortunately, some of the homeowners were not at the DAB meeting and that occurred on August 3rd, 2020, but 8 different homeowners appeared at the August 6, 2020 MAPC meeting to express opposition to the rezoning. The parties requesting the rezoning are getting a do-over due to a technicality, and the homeowners want to make sure that the DAB is aware that there is opposition to the rezoning. In conclusion, we request that you oppose this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. If we could have the next speaker, please. State your name and address for the record. And you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Bill Woodcock, and I live at 5001 South Osage Circle. This also, the duplexes that we put up would be in my backyard, and I would much rather look at a single-family home versus a duplex. Furthermore, I think this adds a significant amount of traffic to an already congested road. And regardless of what your opinion may be, the fact is single-family homes located next to duplexes lose property value to about the tune of 10%. So when you look at what those homes are valued in that area and what homes are selling for in that area, that's a big loss of equity. I want to reiterate that this neighborhood did not ask for the applicants to come in and develop this area. They have provided no information on how this would benefit the neighborhood, nor have they persuaded anybody in this room how this would help benefit them. So I just want to make sure that those 2 pieces of information are not overlooked, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcock. Is there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, if we could have our next speaker, please. Stating your name, your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, Brandon Morgan, 5010 South Osage. I would have this proposed single-family homes in my backyard. That's where I don't have as big a complaint as my neighbors do having the multi. I do have the issue with the traffic. I run my own business from my home. The last thing I need is more traffic coming in and out. And as Levi has stated last time, I'm not sure he said this time, there would be no on-site property management at this location taking care of all these proposed duplexes. Not to mention, you don't have the room on the street for the extra cars. I mean, that's short and sweet. That's what I have to say. I just wish you, the commission, would listen to the people on this. Nobody wants this. Nobody's expecting this, nor have they even reached out to us to sway an opinion and act like they care. I'm not against them, as Eric said, making money on their investments, but please don't let them do it at the cost of the people who duly elect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else down there, Mary?
No, that would be it for here.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this item?
Yes, I would like to address it.
Okay, if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Kevin German, and I live at 730 West 51st Street South, which is about 2 blocks away from the proposed zoning change. And I was the one that went out and made the petition. It was totally informal. I just went around to see what the feel was in the neighborhood. And it was an easy sell, very easy sell, that most people were against it. They'd as soon have single family homes. And official petition, but I just did it so it'd just be 40 people saying they don't want the development of duplexes in the neighborhood versus single family homes versus just me saying it online, because a lot of people won't bother to get online. So that was my intention on that, and I agree with basically everything everybody else said. Too much traffic, and renters aren't going to take as good a care of it as a single family home, which most of the houses in the neighborhood are single family. So that's my 2 cents worth, and I hope it sways your decision.
Thank you, Mr. German. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, Mr. German, I would just like to reiterate the fact that I know you went to great effort to get that protest petition put together and signed. If in fact the commission approves this today, you will have to go out and get a new protest petition. So just an FYI.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else on virtually that would like to address this item? Anyone that would like to address this item? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. I'm sorry, rebuttal, excuse me. Thank you very much. Mr. Bond, you have 2 minutes to rebut.
Thank you, Commission. There's a lot to go through there. I think we talked about most of it last time, but just a couple quick things. Everyone is from the neighborhood that came out today, spoke against the property values for these properties that they own. I can't find any information showing that, and I personally, anecdotally, have looked at tax rolls for similar developments around town. These new builds increase the property values of the homes they go into. These are $300,000 investments. I found some multifamily studies where properties still appreciated faster with mixed-use housing around it instead of just single-family homes. And then you feel free to ask me questions about any of their other statements, but just one thing to remind us on is that this is a zone change request. And as such, we typically use the golden rules for determining whether or not this is a valid request. This has been reviewed by staff, and it meets all of those items except for potentially the opposition or support of neighborhood residents. It's supported by DEB. We have protests here today. But I just want to read you the text after that. This is just one of the factors to be considered, and by itself is not sufficient reason to approve or deny a request. This is within the policies of Wichita and the metropolitan area. Be happy to answer any questions you have, but at this time, I request that you approve TF3 zoning for all 65 lots. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. McKay?
I'll ask the same question again. When this was approved the last time, there were some conditions made on certain properties remaining single-family. And I asked the question earlier, are you willing to do the same thing again? And you said no. Is that the way I heard it?
Once again, that's up to the commission's discretion. In our opinion, that goes against the policy of the metropolitan area and against the staff recommendations today and all data we're able to collect. So we would prefer all 65 lots be zoned TF3, and then the wood fence be added as a requirement between the existing single-family homes in this zoning district.
Okay, thank you. One more question, Mr. McKay?
Is legal still here, Jeff?
Oh, yeah,
Couldn't see him.
he's hiding back,
He's hiding in the back.
hiding in the back. This is how he gets his steps in.
I do apologize, I have a back issue and I can't sit in these bleacher seats without it really hurting, so I have to sit in the corner to.
My question, Jeff, is this, is that we have approved this once before with certain conditions. Can we utilize that same, because it's being reheard?
The fact that there were additional conditions before are not binding on you today, but you can still impose those conditions if you wish.
The next question is, do we all know what they might be?
I would specify them as opposed to relying on a record that we really wouldn't be able to rely on.
Just to make sure we weren't handicapped, that we couldn't,
I
okay,
would
thank you.
itemize them. Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Foster?
Kathy, in the staff report, conformance to plans and policies, it notes areas also located in the South Wichita/Hayesville plan promoting future residential commercial development. And then it also notes that this area is outside the Wichita Places for People plan. You know, we've learned from some past cases that the Places for People plan has some really good ideas about how to best integrate duplex development or multifamily development into single family. Do you recall whether the Wichita-Hayesville plan, does it go a little bit further and talk about the aesthetics?
No, it does not. What it is doing is just recommending that density be allowed to be increased, like going from single family to duplex and including multifamily mixes.
And the follow-up question is, do you have a concern, even though this is outside the established central area, that we can consider utilizing some ideas from the Places for People plan?
You made conditions before with the number of lots to be approved for TF3. I don't see why you couldn't make a condition that would maybe be similar to what we have done in the Places for People area.
I mean, I just recall there's really an improvement relative to garage layout and things like that. It just really helped with the aesthetics of it. Thank you.
Mr. Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. probably am one of the few people that have lived in the unique position of having lived in every one of these scenarios. I have lived in duplexes as a renter. I've lived in duplexes as an owner. I've had duplexes as an investment. I've lived in single-family homes, not directly. I've lived in a duplex that backed up to single-family homes, and there's no difference. When your house is back up, backyard is a backyard, there's virtually no difference there. I currently live in a house not directly across the street, but across the street and one door down is a duplex. So I live in a mixed neighborhood, and a block from me is a whole area of duplexes next to my single-family home. I do not see the problems that I'm hearing, the concerns of the residents that are coming up in this area. I do not, as a realtor, I've not seen the loss of value, so I do not see that as a major concern. I do have a concern and a problem that when you change the game and you've got a single-family home and then you put a duplex right next to that, I've got a problem with that. So having duplexes in the neighborhood is not a concern, but putting it in that right next door to it. So the last time we looked at this, we had a single-family house at the corner of Osage and 50th Street. And so my motion then was to eliminate the 5 lots directly to the east of that single-family home. That would be the south side of 50th Street and east of Osage. So I'm going to make a motion that we eliminate those 5 lots. We eliminate the 6 lots that are directly across the street on 50th Street that face the lots that we're just now taking out, so that would, from that corner back to towards the east. And then also put a requirement that the lots that back up to single-family lots on Osage Court be a wood privacy fence to back up to that area. And I would move that we approve the rest of the lots for the zone change as requested.
I would second that motion. Yes, Mr. Foster?
To go a little bit more in detail, would we not want to have the fencing requirement? You're talking about saving some of the lots along 50th on the south side, is that correct? Because I thought we'd eliminated those.
No, we eliminated the first 5 lots east of the corner of 50th and Osage Avenue on the south side.
Okay. Then I would suggest we have the fencing requirement there.
Behind those? Yeah, I would agree with that. I would amend my motion to include fencing that would back up to single-family homes on those lots, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Second occur?
Yeah.
I have a comment from
I
Century
concur,
2.
yes.
We had a little bit of an audio problem. Do you think you could back up by about a minute?
Yeah, we'll hit the rewind.
And repeat.
Mr. Schiffelbein, can you? Okay, Mr. Warren will restate his motion.
Okay, my motion will be to approve the zone change as presented with the following exceptions. That the 5 lots lying east of the intersection of Osage and 50th Street on the south side would remain single family. That the 6 lots across the street on the north side of the street of 50th Street from Osage Avenue or Osage Court to the east would remain single family. The rest of the lots would be allowed to change to TF3, and that any of the lots that back up to single family lots be required to have 6-foot wood privacy fencing as a minimum requirement.
And that's the motion, and it was duly seconded. Are there any questions on the motion? Yes, Mr. Dool?
Just for clarification, is that the same motion that was made previously?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One point of clarification or discussion is that the requirement for the fence, I've been advised, would best be considered as a protective overlay to accomplish that. So you would have the rezoning and then you would have a protective overlay for the fencing.
I would defer to the staff's method of enforcement on that or of paperwork.
So, yeah, so
Whatever form you use to make sure that that happens.
Okay, we can accomplish the intent,
Yeah.
it's just that's the way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and I concur on the second. Did you have something, Mr. Johnson? No, okay, all right. Everybody good? Everybody know what the motion is? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Yay.
Motion carries 12-1 with Mr. Joe Johnson in the negative. Okay, moving on to our next item, 5.3, which is zone case number 25.
Yes, so this is also a rehearing, so I'll give just a brief overview. This is an application filed to rezone the property from single-family to limited commercial in order to build a commercial building on the site. This is associated with a vacation 2020 number 25 that you approved just a little bit earlier. History on this case is that it went to DAB 3 on August 5th and was approved 4-0 with 1 abstention, and it was at the Planning Commission and received staff recommendation approval of 14-0 along with the protective overlay as outlined in your staff report. The subject property is adjacent to commercial land that's owned by the applicant, and this is just an expansion of their commercial development, and staff is recommending approval with that protective overlay. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff on this? Seeing none, do we have the agent or applicant?
Yes, Kirk Miller, I'm the agent, and we're fine with staff comments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the agent? Seeing none, do we have anybody at Century 2 that would like to address this case?
No comment from Century 2.
Okay. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve as per staff comments.
Okay, Mr. Florence made the motion. Mr. Nix on the second. Any questions concerning the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And we have 1 abstention, so the vote will be 11-01 due to Mr. McKay having left the building. Alrighty. Moving on to the next case, 5.4 has been deferred for 2 weeks, and we'll go to item 5.5.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, Philip Ziebenbergen, planning staff. Zone 2020-36, the applicant is requesting the rezoning of a parcel located on the north side of East Kellogg Drive and just east of South Edgemore Drive. The property is undeveloped. If you want to go to the aerial, Jim. You can see there's no building currently on there. It's currently zoned GO General Office, and they're requesting it NR Neighborhood Retail, and they proposed a protective overlay that would become protective overlay number 355. The applicant submitted text for the protective overlay. You have it in your staff report to review. I'm not going to go over item by item. The one thing that I will address are where staff's recommended language differed from the protective overlay that the applicant suggested. Overall, we're in favor of pretty much everything that they put in their protective overlay. There was nothing in there that really stood out as to any major issues. The two things that I want to address is really one of them was just a modification of some language of how it was stated related to the proposed, if there is a coffee shop or a restaurant built, the square footage ratio of the restaurant to the parcel area. Just the way they described it, it was just it just could be streamlined in the language a little bit more. The only other things that we wanted to address is there's a variance on the site. It includes all of the properties that are zone GO, not just this one, but it's variance BZA 2002-46. It was approved back in 2002. It was a variance to the sign code that permitted one or more than one ground sign per business on a zoning lot. And so in their section 2 of the protective overlay related to signage, I just stated the fact that there was a BZA related to the ground signs, just so that if somebody in the future were just to pull up this protective overlay to use as a guidance on how to develop the site, they would know that there'd be additional allowances in the sign code based on that variance that was approved in 2002. The final thing was for the screening. The applicant proposed a 6-foot screening wall along the north property line between this and the dental office that is north of that. Based on the zoning code, it is commercial property abutting commercial property, and it's not required because of that. In conversation with the applicant, they said that it's basically an agreement that's been agreed upon from the contract purchaser and the contract seller. So the person selling the property was wanting them to build a wall, and they've agreed to do that as part of the purchase agreement. Staff did not feel like it was necessary to put that into the protective overlay since the zoning code does not require it. So obviously it is up to your consideration on whether or not you'd want to include it, but I felt it was not necessarily pertinent to put restrictions on there if it was part of a private agreement. So those are the only differences in protective overlay. Otherwise, we were fine with the language that they supplied. Property to the north, as I mentioned before, is zone GO, and it's the dental office. Directly south of the Kellogg Freeway is zone limited commercial with commercial uses. Property in the west is also zone limited commercial. It's the Sedgwick County Tag Office. And property to the east is zoned SF5 and TF3. However, if you look on that aerial image in front of you, the property directly east of it is actually owned by the city of Wichita, and I think it's like a maintenance outpost or something like that related to the Kellogg Freeway. So you can see there it takes a little bit going further east before we actually get to residential uses. And there's actually, when we get to the pictures, you can see there's actually a barrier wall between that little maintenance outpost and the backyards of the single-family homes that are in that neighborhood. I mentioned the case history with the variance. Public services. East Kellogg Drive is a 2-lane frontage road for Kellogg. South Ridgecrest Road, which is the road on the east side of the property, is a 2-lane paved local street. Something we are providing in addition in our staff reports now is discussing the opportunities, or at least the locations of sidewalks. Neither Ridgecrest nor Edgemore Drive have sidewalks. South Edgemore Drive does on the east side of the right-of-way. All municipal services are available on the property. Potentially may need to be extended depending on where they're at and where they're going to be building. So those are all available. Conformance to the comprehensive plan. The community investments plan identifies this parcel as being suitable for commercial development, which encompasses the wide range of commercial opportunities, so it's in conformance with that plan. This site is also located within the established central areas defined by the Wichita Places for People plan. That plan identifies this area as a transition area, which is defined as an area necessary between a node and the edge that allows the intensity of development and uses and a mix of uses to transition from the surrounding neighborhood to the surrounding neighborhood context. So you have the node in the plan is Oliver and Kellogg, and then you have the edge, which is the residential neighborhood to the east of that. So this is in that transition zone. And zoning classifications such as general office and neighborhood retail were designed for just that. You have higher intensity commercial zoning such as limited commercial or general commercial, which would be much more closer to the node. And you want to step those down with less intense uses as you go down to the residential uses in the neighborhood. So it is also in conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan as well. Based on the information at the time of the staff report, staff is recommending approval, subject to the protective overlay that is amended by staff. The recommended language is before you. Like I said, just to reiterate, putting in language regarding the variance in the sign section, rewording some information in point 1 regarding the floor area ratio to the parcel area, and then removing the requirement of the 6-foot masonry wall out of item 4 regarding the screening, as it's more part of a private agreement and it's not required by the zoning code. Other factors we'll look at regarding this, the suitability of the subject property for the uses it's been restricted. It could be developed as general office, there's no issue with that. However, moving up to a neighborhood retail zoning classification is definitely not out of the question. It is an appropriate zoning for a location like this. The site has been vacant for some time, so potentially it provides a little bit more economic opportunity, especially being within the established central area, which is the infill strategy. That is something we're looking at wanting to do, provide opportunity for people to develop their land for economic development. And the protective overlay that is written for this should minimize any negative impacts on the surrounding area. We've already talked about conformance to the comprehensive plan, and there should be minimal to no impact on the community facilities. I can take you through pictures around the site if you want to go through those. This is looking, I'm standing in the middle of the site, looking north. There's the dental office. You can keep going, just kind of cycle through these. Looking to the northeast, you can, actually it's not a barrier wall. I see it's actually a barrier wall. It's a masonry wall. You can see the masonry wall that's between this site and the residential neighborhood to the northeast. Keep going. This is looking directly south at Kellogg. That's the tag office to the west. Keep going. And that's looking to the southeast at Kellogg in the parking lot of the tag office. And I can stand for any staff questions. Oh, I should say it was heard by DAB 1 Monday night. The agent for the applicant was there. There were no public comments, and DAB recommended approval to the City Council 8-0.
Questions for staff? Hearing no questions. Do we have the agent or applicant?
Good afternoon. Tim Austin here as agent for the applicant, address 5053 North Santee Court, Wichita, Kansas. We're in agreement with staff comments and be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Do you have any questions for the agent? Hearing none, thank you. Stand by.
Thank you.
Is there anybody at Century 2 that would like to speak to this item?
Yep. Yes, we have one speaker today.
Okay. If you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Akridge, and I live at the home across the street. I would like to express my concern with changing this from general office to retail. The point being, I've spent more than 20 years investing in my neighborhood and my home, and that's probably one of my largest investments I have and for the future. And once it's rezoned to retail, there's no commitment to the type of retail it could be. Being a neighborhood might not be so bad the first one, but as the owners change, it could absolutely turn into one that may be less desirable. As far as some of the things that happened, being right beside the tag office. There is no parking. There's no street parking. There's barely emergency to drive through there. And on a couple of times a year, actually, a couple of times a month, even before COVID. Let's see. So it'd probably be a good parking lot for the tag office, actually. I don't know if you've been there. But, you know, this being residential, you know, the general office fits better than rezoning it for neighborhood retail. There is no other retail around there. The only retail there is, I don't know, a mile away. So as far as growing and an opportunity for anything to grow there, pretty low. So I understand if you have someone that could buy it, it would be of value, but perhaps there's a better avenue here. And I hope you oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Yes, Mr. Foster, if you could have, Mary, could you make sure that the speaker comes back to the microphone, please?
Yes.
Sir, I was just curious, did you get a chance to look at the protective overlay, the uses that this is being limited to?
Yes, I did. And while it had some specifics that were just fine, when it got to the retail part, it made it very broad, restaurant and retail. So it could be a smoke shop next year if it was a coffee shop per se, which is what I heard. Then there goes hours and traffic, and it could be a liquor store to turn into. So you know, the retail thing is really the problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you. Is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back for rebuttal. Mr. Austin. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I'll be brief, which is unusual for me, you know that. But just a couple quick comments. One, this property was originally platted in 1949. It was platted in its current configuration in 1998. It does have an extensive deed restriction on uses, and the uses that were prepared in the protective overlay are the same as what's allowed in the deed restriction. I think there's been a long history of contemplation here, consideration about uses that would be compatible with the neighborhood, and I certainly know the applicant is desirous to maintain that, as was the seller of the property, but it has been vacant land that's been around for, 80 years or so. The other thing, just to note, this tract is only 27,000 square feet in size. So just by virtue of the size of the property, any of the typical detrimental impacts that we normally like to discuss are greatly diminished. And so I think with the neighborhood retail use and with all the restrictions that are already put in, I think it's very appropriate. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Yeah, Mr. Austin, could you elaborate a little bit further on the deed restriction and retail, for example? I don't know if there's requirements on distance for liquor stores or perhaps some other uses that might not be appropriate adjacent to residential. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, the deed restriction does contemplate liquor stores, as does our zoning code. I believe there's some separation requirements, both from from residential and public parks, and obviously we have public property just to the north of this with the police substation and the city park. We also have the hospital, VA hospital complex just to the west of the intersection. And so the intensity of the type use, the potential for undesirable uses like liquor stores, those are not allowed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission.
Got questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Warren.
Staff question, do we know what the next door where the tag office is? That used to be ultra-modern pools. I assume that would be considered retail. Was that zoned, that lot next to it zoned retail at one? at
It's
some
zone
point?
limited commercial.
Commercial? Okay, do they, when they sell stuff as a retail outlet like that, is that a?
I'm sorry, can you restate your question?
Well, I guess that was, they sold retail. I assume that was a retail,
Yeah,
so.
and retail's, I mean,
the
limited commercial is
retail's
one step
okay in
above
general?
neighborhood retail.
Say what?
Limited commercial is even a step above neighborhood retail in intensity.
Okay,
It allows more things than neighborhood retail would,
okay, thank you.
including more intensity of retail development.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Could you give me the DAB vote again?
Yeah, it was 8.
It was 8-0.
8-0?
In favor.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
With that said, 8-0, I would move to approve this.
Mr. Bill Johnson, didn't we already have a motion on the floor? We didn't. Okay, Mr. Johnson made the motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Nix on the second, so we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is there any other business that staff may have that needs to be addressed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.